The chamber of the Galactic Council had no windows. It did not need them. The stars were old when this place was built, and most of the beings inside were older still. Their bodies were shaped by evolution, machines, or pure energy, but all of them shared one thing: power. They ruled thousands of worlds. They had ended wars before they even began. And now, they were silent. At the center of the chamber stood the elders. They did not sit. They never did when the matter was serious. Their voices were slow, layered, and heavy, as if each word carried the weight of centuries. Before this council votes, one elder said, "There is a warning." A low murmur spread across the chamber. Warnings were rare. Elders did not waste words. "Never," the elder continued, "dare to provoke humans." The reaction was immediate. Some delegates laughed, sharp, metallic sounds. Others exchanged amused signals. A few simply showed confusion. Humans? A minor species. From the quiet edge of explored space. No major fleets. No recent wars. No visible ambition. A younger council member spoke, unable to hide their disbelief. "Elders," they said, "humans have been irrelevant for generations. Their population is small. Their territory is limited. Their technology is adequate at best." Another delegate added, "They barely attend council sessions. They avoid conflict. They trade. They farm. They disappear." The chamber filled with agreement. The elder did not argue. Instead, another elder stepped forward. "There was a time," it said, "when humans were everywhere." The chamber grew quiet again. They fought no wars of conquest. They built no empires. They asked for no worship. Yet when conflict came to them, entire civilizations vanished. A ripple of unease moved through the room. "If that is true," a delegate challenged, "why is there no record? Why are humans not feared?" The elder's answer was simple. "Because we erased them from memory." That silence was different. Heavy. Uncomfortable. "We removed them from history." The elder continued. "Because remembering them caused panic. Because younger species copied their methods. Because war followed wherever their name was spoken." The council hesitated. Then the rising empire's representative stood. Tall, confident, armored in symbols of conquest. "With respect," they said, "ancient fear should not guide modern policy. Our expansion requires resources. One of those resources lies within human space." A display appeared above the chamber. A small human colony world. Peaceful, poorly defended. "We will annex it," the representative declared. Cleanly, without bloodshed if possible. The council prepared to vote. The elders said nothing more. They simply turned away. The vote passed. The fleet arrived at the human colony within hours. There were no defenses, no warning shots, no desperate pleas. The planet surrendered without resistance. The Empire celebrated. The galaxy barely noticed. Days passed, then weeks. The occupiers expected riots, sabotage, terror. They got none. The human cities were quiet. Too quiet. No crowds. No speeches. No symbols of rebellion. Human workers followed orders. Human leaders requested meetings and asked strange questions instead of making demands. "How long will you stay? Who authorized this operation? May we record this conversation?" The Empire allowed it. Confident powers always do. Then the first supply ship failed to arrive. Then another. Then long-range sensors near the planet began to malfunction, but only there. Patrols reported shadows on scanners. Movements that vanished when approached. Captured humans showed no fear. No hatred. Only attention. A commander reviewed security footage late into the night. He replayed a single clip again and again. A human civilian, standing still as soldiers passed by. Not pleading. Not resisting. Just watching. The commander felt a chill he could not explain. Finally, a message arrived. Not a threat. Not a demand. A simple transmission, sent to the Empire, the Council, and every major archive at once. It contained names, dates, orders, every action taken on the colony. At the end, one short line. "This is now recorded." Across the galaxy, the elders closed their eyes. The warning had been given. And once again, no one had listened. The Empire declared the occupation a success. That was the first mistake. From the outside, the human colony appeared stable. Production quotas were met. Power grids stayed online. Atmosphere processors ran clean and efficient. The planet did not burn. It did not riot. It did not cry for help. That calm convinced the Empire they were right. Humans were weak. The occupying governor sent his report to the capital with satisfaction. Minimal resistance. Population compliant. No military response from human space. The report was archived. No one noticed the delay in its arrival. The first true concern came from logistics. Supply vessels assigned to the colony began to miss check-ins. At first, commanders blamed common issues, navigation errors, mechanical faults, careless crews. Space was large. Ships vanished all the time. Then the patterns emerged. Only ships traveling to or from the human system were affected. Only ships carrying occupation supplies, personnel rotations, or extracted resources. Scout drones sent to investigate returned empty data cores. Their sensors had recorded nothing, but they had consumed full power as if tracking something massive. Engineers ran diagnostics. Everything was within acceptable error. That answer made senior officers uneasy. On the surface, human cities continued to function too well. Cameras showed orderly streets. Factories ran without slowdown. Human workers followed instructions precisely, never late, never early. Productivity increased by exactly 3.2% after occupation. That number disturbed analysts more than open rebellion would have. Human leaders attended meetings with Empire officials. They asked no emotional questions. They never protested. They never begged. Instead, they asked for clarification. Please state the chain of command for this operation. May we confirm the duration of this occupation? Are these orders permanent or subject to review? Each question was polite, reasonable, and recorded. Every meeting ended the same way. The human representatives would thank the officials for their time. Then they would ask one final question. May we keep a copy of this discussion? The Empire allowed it. Strong powers did not fear records. In orbit, soldiers began to complain. Not loudly, not officially, just small things. A patrol officer reported hearing voices over an open channel, human languages that should not have been broadcast. The audio logs showed only static. Another crew reported lights moving between asteroids, too fast for debris, too slow for weapons. Sleep cycles were disrupted. Dreams increased. Nightmares, specifically. Medical scans found nothing wrong. The human population, when questioned, showed concern. Sympathy. One human medic told an Empire soldier, "High-stress environments can cause hallucinations. You should rest more." The soldier agreed. The medic smiled. 3 weeks into the occupation, the first incident occurred. A garrison command center lost power for 17 seconds. 17 seconds was nothing. But in that time, every internal system reset. Doors unlocked. Weapons safeties disengaged. Security logs wiped themselves clean. When power returned, everything was normal, except for one new file added to the system. It was labeled Occupation Record, Entry 001. The file contained names of commanding officers, exact troop counts, equipment inventories, order timestamps, information that should not have been accessible. Command ordered an investigation. Human technicians were questioned. They were confused, apologetic. One technician explained calmly, "We do not have access to those systems." That was true. They never said they didn't understand them. At the Galactic Council, whispers began. Minor species noticed trade disruptions. Shipping lanes felt thinner. Insurance costs near human space rose sharply. A junior archivist cross-referenced recent data. Human systems were quiet. Too quiet. No fleet movements. No distress calls. No diplomatic protests. Just data traffic. Massive, silent, encrypted data transfers flowing outward. Legal by council standards. Invisible unless one knew exactly where to look. The archivist reported it. The report was dismissed. The Empire's patience began to wear thin. The governor demanded faster resource extraction, increased labor quotas, expanded control zones. Human leaders listened. They agreed. They even helped plan the expansions, offering precise geological data and infrastructure layouts. Entire regions were handed over smoothly. No resistance. No anger. Only cooperation. The governor felt pride. He sent another report to the capital. It arrived late. Then came the disappearance. A high-ranking Imperial inspector arrived to evaluate the occupation. His ship entered the system on schedule. It never exited. No explosion. No distress signal. No debris field. Just absence. The Empire panicked, quietly. Search fleets were dispatched. They found nothing. Human traffic controllers expressed confusion and concern. They offered to help. They provided sensor data. The data showed the inspector's ship entering orbit and then stopping, as if something had asked it politely to wait. That was when fear finally crept in, not among civilians, among strategists. At a secure military hub far from human space, an Empire intelligence officer studied archived material flagged centuries ago. The files were old, restricted, labeled Elder Classification. He should not have had access. Someone had granted it. The documents described a species that avoided dominance, that avoided expansion, that avoided conflict. A species that specialized in systems warfare, information control, and long-term attrition. A species that never fought fair battles. Because fair battles ended too quickly. The officer's hands trembled as he read the final note. Humans do not retaliate immediately. They prepare. They record. They make examples. The officer tried to forward the file. The transmission failed. A new message appeared on his console. File acknowledged. On the occupied world, a human child watched an Empire patrol march past her home. She held a small device in her hands. It displayed a counter. Numbers climbing slowly. She asked her mother, "Is it almost done?" The mother nodded. "Yes," she said softly. "Almost." Above them, unseen, the stars shifted their alignment by fractions, so small no Empire sensor flagged them. But the humans noticed. They always did. The elders met alone. They did not call the council. They did not intervene. One elder finally spoke. "The silence has begun." Another replied. "Then the outcome is already decided." Far away, the Empire prepared reinforcements. They believed escalation would restore control. They believed force would end uncertainty. They believed humans were still reacting. They were wrong. Humans had already moved. The galaxy just hadn't felt it yet. And when it did, it would not be gentle. The Empire's High Intelligence Directorate had a rule older than its banners. If a file carried Elder Classification, it stayed buried. Those files described disasters that did not end in explosions, wars that never had a final battle, victories that felt like slow suffocation. The rule existed because younger empires tended to believe themselves immune to ancient mistakes. The rule was broken at 3:11 station time. A junior analyst, assigned to track the missing inspector, noticed something impossible. The ship's last known position appeared in 3 databases that did not talk to one another. The timestamps were not identical. They were staggered, as if the event had been recorded from different futures. The analyst escalated the anomaly. The escalation triggered a lock. The lock triggered an archive. The archive opened files no one had read in centuries. They were not labeled human. They were labeled contingency. The documents described a species that avoided obvious power because obvious power drew resistance. A species that learned early that victory was not winning battles, but deciding when battles no longer mattered. A species that treated time as a weapon and patience as doctrine. The analyst read until his vision blurred. Then his console chimed. A message appeared, routed internally, signed with his own clearance code. He had not sent it. It read, "Correlation complete. Thank you." He tried to disconnect. The system refused. Across the Empire, similar moments unfolded. Officers attempting routine checks found themselves diverted into old logs. Engineers noticed diagnostic tools suggesting improvements they had not requested. Logistics officers received optimization routes that increased efficiency by small, undeniable margins. Every improvement carried a signature pattern. Human math. Simple. Brutal. Exact. None of it broke the law. None of it crossed security thresholds. Each change could be justified in isolation. Together, they formed something else entirely. On the occupied world, human administrators continued their cooperation. They attended meetings. They produced reports. They answered questions with care. When orders arrived, they implemented them perfectly. Too perfectly. Imperial auditors began to notice that human schedules left no slack. No buffer. Every system ran at maximum acceptable load without exceeding it. When asked why, human managers offered the same explanation. Efficiency reduces waste. Waste, to humans, included time. The governor demanded higher output. Humans complied. The planet's energy draw increased by a fraction. Not enough to alarm anyone. Just enough to require adjustments elsewhere. Those adjustments rippled. Power routing changes altered station schedules. Station schedules altered shipping windows. Shipping windows altered insurance risk models. Risk models altered capital flows. Within a month, 3 unrelated trade houses declared emergency restructuring. They did not know why. At the Galactic Council, a delegate finally asked the question others had avoided. Why are humans not protesting? The answer came from a data clerk who had stayed awake too long. Because they are not a political culture, the clerk said. They are a procedural one. The chamber laughed. The clerk did not. Meanwhile, the missing inspector's family demanded answers. The Empire issued a statement citing navigational hazards. The statement was accurate. A hazard had existed. It was administrative. A single line had been added to a routing table. It redirected vessels matching specific criteria into a holding pattern outside normal sensor coverage. The pattern was legal. It was used for quarantine, for inspections, for customs delays. The inspector's ship met the criteria. It waited. No one told it to leave. Human systems flagged the wait as compliant. Time passed. The crew rationed. They sent inquiries. They received automated acknowledgments. Your request has been received. The message was polite. It did not include a timeline. Back on the planet, an Empire officer confronted a human liaison. This is not normal, he said. Your people act as if nothing matters. The liaison considered this. Many things matter, she replied. We simply choose the order. The officer demanded to know what order that was. She asked permission to answer on record. He agreed. She said, first comes memory. Then comes alignment. Then comes consequence. He did not understand. He signed the transcript. At an elder's sanctuary, far from public channels, 2 elders reviewed live projections. They did not speak often. When they did, it was brief. They have begun the long method, said one. They have refined it, said the other. The first elder observed the data streams. They are not targeting fleets. No, said the second. They are targeting assumptions. The Empire's assumptions began to fail quietly. A border skirmish elsewhere went unresolved because a resupply convoy arrived late. A political vote stalled because delegates were delayed by transit disruptions. A weapons upgrade failed certification due to a missing component sourced from a now insolvent supplier. Each failure had a cause. Each cause had a record. Human archivists compiled them with care. They did not hide the records. They distributed them through legal channels, public repositories, academic networks. The data was boring, accurate, indisputable. Analysts began citing it. Journalists began referencing it. Opposition parties began asking why so many failures traced back to one occupation. The Empire responded with force posture updates. Fleets repositioned. Drills increased. Announcements were made. The announcements stabilized markets for exactly 3 days. On the 4th day, a human research collective published a paper. It proposed a new efficiency metric for interstellar logistics. The math was elegant. The examples were real. The conclusion was devastating. Empires optimized for control collapse faster than those optimized for resilience. The paper went viral in academic circles. Investors noticed. Insurance noticed. Allies noticed. None of it violated any rule. On the occupied world, a human elder spoke to a group of children in a community hall. The elder explained how systems worked, how small choices accumulated, how patience was not waiting, but preparation. A child asked when the soldiers would leave. The elder said, when the question answers itself. In orbit, a patrol ship requested maintenance at a human dock. The request was routine. The dock complied. The ship was repaired efficiently. When it departed, its fuel consumption was marginally lower. The captain praised the work. He did not realize the improvement altered his range calculations enough to place him in a different refueling schedule months later. That schedule intersected with a canceled depot. At the capital, a senior advisor finally connected the dots. He requested an emergency session. The council convened. He spoke plainly. We are not under attack, he said. We are being reorganized. Laughter followed. By whom? Asked a delegate. The advisor answered. By the only species that learned how to lose without forgetting. Silence replaced laughter. The advisor continued. They are not seeking revenge. They are seeking correction. They are adjusting the galaxy until we no longer fit the shape we assumed. A vote was proposed to withdraw from the human colony. The vote failed. Too many delegates were delayed. On the occupied world, the human liaison received an update. She reviewed it, nodded, and forwarded a summary to a public archive. The summary listed milestones achieved. Alignment approaching threshold. She closed the file. That night, across multiple sectors, navigation beacons recalibrated themselves to a new standard. The change was announced weeks earlier. No one had prioritized it. Human ships complied immediately. Others struggled. The difference was small. The effect was not. At dawn, the Empire awoke to headlines it did not control, markets it could not calm, and systems that no longer obeyed familiar patterns. The elders watched. They had seen this before. Not the first move. Not the warning. Not the silence. The remembering. When humans remembered, the galaxy changed shape around them. And it was only beginning. The first official collapse was small enough to be dismissed. A mid-level trade coalition failed to meet its quarterly obligations. The cause was listed as logistical irregularities compounded by market hesitation. That phrasing was common. It appeared in reports all the time. Normally, it meant corruption, mismanagement, or bad forecasts. This time, it meant something else. Every route the coalition depended on still existed. Every contract was still valid. Every ship was accounted for. Yet deliveries arrived late by minutes that stacked into hours, then days. Warehouses filled with the wrong goods at the wrong times. Automated systems flagged inefficiencies but could not correct them without violating new optimization standards recently adopted across the sector. Standards no one remembered voting on. The coalition dissolved quietly. No explosions. No emergency broadcasts. Just signatures on documents and a slow transfer of assets to more stable partners. Those partners had one thing in common. They had adjusted early. They had listened to human advisories when they appeared as harmless academic suggestions and voluntary compliance frameworks. They had updated software. They had retrained analysts. They had changed how they thought about margins, buffers, and control. Others had not. The Empire noticed the pattern too late. Its economists argued among themselves. Some claimed coincidence. Others blamed sabotage. A few dared to suggest systemic interference. But those voices were drowned out by louder assurances. We are still the largest power, officials said. No one can undermine us without force. Force remained the Empire's answer. They announced expanded patrols around the occupied human world. Additional fleets were dispatched. The move was meant to project strength. Instead, it strained schedules already stretched thin. Dockyards struggled to meet new demands. Maintenance cycles shortened. Crews rotated faster than recommended. Minor accidents increased. Nothing catastrophic. Just friction. Human observers recorded everything. They did not interfere. They did not comment. They only updated models. On the occupied planet, a human systems engineer stood before an Imperial Oversight Committee. She presented a proposal to optimize planetary output under occupation constraints. The math was simple. The benefits were clear. The committee approved it unanimously. Within weeks, planetary exports increased again. But so did dependency. The planet no longer needed Empire oversight to function. It needed Empire infrastructure to survive at the level the Empire now demanded. The distinction was subtle, but irreversible. The engineer archived the approval. She labeled it consent. In deep space, far from trade lanes, the missing inspector's ship finally lost power. Life support entered minimal mode. The crew prepared for death. Then a message arrived. Dock clearance granted. Coordinates followed. The ship was guided, not by tractor beam, but by adjusted gravitational markers, toward a structure that did not appear on any chart. It was old, not ancient, just overlooked. A human station. The crew docked. They were met by humans wearing no uniforms. No weapons. Only badges identifying roles, logistics, health, arbitration. The humans explained calmly that the ship had been held due to unresolved administrative conflicts. Those conflicts were now resolved. The crew was offered food, medical care, and a choice. They could return, or they could testify. The inspector chose to testify. At the Empire's capital, emergency sessions multiplied. Each session addressed a different crisis. None addressed all of them. A senior strategist finally demanded a full-spectrum analysis. He ordered all departments to share data without filters. The results terrified him. Every failure traced back to decisions made after the occupation began. Every decision was legal. Every outcome was foreseeable. Someone had simply foreseen them first. The strategist noticed another detail. Human names appeared everywhere in the data, not as commanders, not as leaders, but as contributors, advisors, auditors, consultants. Humans had not seized control. They had been invited. The strategist requested a private channel with the elders. The elders declined. They sent a message instead. You were warned. The Empire prepared a decisive act. They would end the occupation by force and demonstrate authority before confidence collapsed completely. Fleets were redirected. Timetables compressed. Orders issued. The operation was named Restoration. Humans learned of it 12 minutes after the first encrypted order was transmitted. They did not interfere with the order. They updated the model. The model's outcome was not favorable to the Empire. Human communities across multiple systems initiated pre-approved contingency protocols. These protocols were not military. They were contractual. Human corporations invoked force majeure clauses. Human researchers withdrew licenses. Human technicians reassigned themselves according to ethical compliance standards recognized by the Council. Entire sectors lost access to human support overnight. Not because humans left, because the rules changed. The Empire's fleets launched. Half arrived late. The other half arrived on time, to find their objectives no longer relevant. The colony's spaceports had been reclassified as neutral arbitration zones hours earlier, using Council precedents older than the Empire itself. Any attack would constitute a multi-species violation. The Empire hesitated. That hesitation was recorded. Across the galaxy, markets reacted to the hesitation, not the fleets. Confidence dipped. Allies began issuing statements of concern. Some quietly repositioned assets. Others quietly withdrew. The Empire's communication minister addressed the public. He spoke of strength, resolve, and destiny. The broadcast glitched once. Just once. For half a second, viewers saw a human annotation overlaying the minister's speech. It displayed real-time fact checks. Sources cited. Assumptions highlighted. The overlay vanished. The damage did not. Panic spread. Not fear of humans, but fear of uncertainty. If the Empire could not even control its own narrative, what else was slipping? On the occupied world, human citizens gathered peacefully in public squares. They held no signs. They chanted nothing. They simply stood. Drones recorded them. The footage spread. Analysts noted the crowd density matched emergency response simulations for evacuation scenarios. But no evacuation occurred. The crowd dispersed after exactly 47 minutes. The significance of that number was not explained. At the Elder Sanctuary, projections updated again. They have crossed the visibility threshold, said one elder. Yes, said the other. Now the galaxy can see the pattern. Will the Empire stop? No. Then it will break. In the Empire's core systems, automated governance tools flagged cascading risk. They recommended policy reversals, diplomatic overtures, de-escalation. The recommendations were overridden. Authority demanded certainty. Humans understood this weakness well. They had built entire histories around it. A human archive released a new dataset to the public. It compared empires that adapted under pressure to those that doubled down. The survival rates were not kind. The dataset trended across networks. It was discussed in classrooms, boardrooms, and private channels. No one could accuse it of bias. It used imperial data. The Empire's ruler stared at the projections in silence. For the first time, he asked a question not meant for subordinates. When did this start? No one answered. Because the truth was uncomfortable. It had not started with the occupation. It had started the moment the warning was ignored. The fleets remained in holding patterns. The operation stalled. Commanders requested clarification. None came. Human systems updated again. Alignment neared completion. The galaxy did not explode. It shifted. And the Empire, built on rigid certainty, began to crack, not from attack, but from adjustment. Humans watched. They had not reached the point of consequence yet, but they were close. The Empire's ruler had always believed fear was a tool. It was something to be directed outward, never inward. A shadow cast over enemies so allies felt safe standing close. For decades, that belief had worked. Fleets moved when he spoke. Markets steadied when he appeared. Dissent vanished when his image filled the sky. Now, fear sat with him. It did not shout. It did not threaten. It waited. Reports arrived faster than they could be read. Not disasters. Those would have been easier. These were summaries, charts, probability curves bending in directions no one liked. Each one carried the same quiet conclusion. Control was slipping, and no lever existed to pull it back all at once. The ruler ordered arrests. Advisors, analysts, governors. Someone had to be responsible. The arrests were clean, legal, public. They changed nothing. The systems kept drifting. Human-aligned standards propagated through neutral space, not by force, but by preference. Merchants adopted them because they reduced loss. Insurers demanded them because they lowered risk. Worlds that refused found themselves isolated, not sanctioned, just avoided. Avoidance hurt more than war. On the occupied world, Empire troops remained in position, but their posture had changed. Patrols moved slower. Commanders checked orders twice. Soldiers began asking questions they had never asked before. What happens if the Empire leaves? No one had an answer. Human officials continued to assist. They provided food logistics, medical support, and conflict mediation between Imperial units and local populations. They never demanded concessions. They did not need to. Every interaction produced data. Every resolution created precedent. Every precedent fed a framework now used across 3 sectors. The framework had a name. Adaptive Stability Protocols. The name was human. At the Galactic Council, emergency attendance reached historic highs. Species that had not spoken in generations requested the floor. Trade partners once loyal to the Empire expressed temporary concern. Neutral blocs proposed reviews of occupation legality under updated metrics. The Empire's ambassador argued fiercely. These metrics did not exist at the time of the occupation, he said. A council jurist replied calmly, they exist now. The motion passed. It did not order withdrawal. It ordered evaluation. Evaluation froze everything. No expansion. No escalation. No decisive action without review. The Empire's greatest weapon, speed, was gone. In deep space, the inspector testified. He spoke carefully. He did not accuse. He did not exaggerate. He described waiting. He described the systems responding politely while denying urgency. He described realizing, slowly, that no one was threatening him, and that this was worse. They did not imprison us, he told the council recorders. They placed us in a process. And once inside it, there was nowhere to appeal. The testimony spread. So did the fear. Within the Empire's military, a quiet divide formed. Younger officers questioned doctrine. Older ones clung to it harder. Simulations were run behind closed doors. In every simulation where force was applied directly against human systems, the result was the same. Victory. Brief. Costly. And followed by collapse. Because humans did not concentrate assets. They distributed them. You could destroy a human fleet. You could not destroy human alignment. The ruler demanded a final option. Something irreversible. His strategists hesitated. Then one spoke. We can break the pattern, the strategist said. But only by burning through it. The plan was brutal. The Empire would disengage from human integrated systems entirely. Sever trade. Abandon shared infrastructure. Rebuild internally at immense cost. The Empire would shrink, but survive. The ruler considered this. Survival through retreat felt like defeat. He ordered a modified version instead. Partial disengagement. Enough to send a message. The order went out. Human systems acknowledged it. Then they adapted. Contracts executed exit clauses automatically. Resource flows rerouted. Dependencies unwound with terrifying efficiency. What the Empire intended as pressure became acceleration. The Empire's internal networks strained as redundancy vanished. Rolling outages began. Not enough to cause panic. Enough to cause doubt. On the occupied world, human leaders gathered. Not to celebrate. To mourn. They knew what came next. A human historian addressed the assembly. We are nearing consequence, she said. Remember why. They remembered. They remembered burned cities from centuries past. Remembered treaties broken by impatience. Remembered that the galaxy only listened when the cost of not listening became unbearable. They did not hate the Empire. Hate was inefficient. They understood it. That was why this hurt. The Empire's ruler addressed his people. His speech was powerful, defiant, certain. For the first time, no human overlay appeared. Humans did not need to correct it anymore. Reality would. Within days, an allied state announced a strategic realignment. Then another. Then a third. Each statement was polite, respectful. Each cited economic necessity. The Empire stood alone, not encircled, but unsupported. That was when the First World petitioned for departure. Not rebellion. Withdrawal. The petition followed every legal channel. It cited precedent, hardship, and misalignment with current standards. The council reviewed it. Approved. The world left peacefully. Others watched. The ruler ordered the petitions denied. They were. But the damage was done. Leaving was possible. Human observers updated the model. Consequence probability crossed threshold. At the elder's sanctuary, the projections shifted color. One elder spoke. They have reached the point they warned us about. The point of no return? No, the other replied. The point of choice. In the empire's capital, the ruler finally requested a direct channel to human leadership. The request was acknowledged. A time was scheduled. Not immediately. 3 days later. Those 3 days were agony. Markets wavered. Protests formed. Fleets waited for orders that did not come. When the channel opened, the ruler expected a council, a command staff, a show of power. He saw one human. Unarmed. Calm. We warned you. The human said, without accusation. You hid yourselves, the ruler replied. You let us believe you were weak. The human nodded. Yes. Why? Because strength that must be displayed invites challenge, the human said. We prefer strength that ends arguments. The ruler demanded terms. The human did not present demands. She presented outcomes. The empire could continue resisting. It would fracture slowly, painfully, legally. Or it could accept restructuring guided by protocols humans had already shared. The ruler saw the truth then. There was no victory left. Only survival with dignity. He asked the question that mattered. What happens if we refuse? The human answered honestly. You become a lesson. Silence followed. Across the galaxy, systems waited. The ruler closed his eyes. He had ruled through fear. Now he understood its name. It was not humanity. It was inevitability. And humans had mastered it. The transmission ended. Human archives updated the record. Alignment complete. Consequence initiated. The moment consequence initiated, nothing exploded. That confused everyone. Empires expected consequence to look like fire, fleets, or collapse. They expected alarms and emergency alerts. They expected the sound of something ending. Instead, the galaxy grew quieter. Trade routes did not close. They thinned. Communications did not fail. They slowed. Governments did not fall. They began to hesitate. The empire felt it first in its core systems. Decisions that once took minutes now required reviews. Reviews required justification. Justifications triggered audits based on the very protocols humans had published openly months earlier. Every audit was fair. Every rule was legal. Every delay was justified. The empire had ruled through speed and certainty. Humans had removed both. In military command centers, officers stared at timelines that no longer aligned. Fleet redeployments conflicted with civilian shipping priorities. Energy allocation models contradicted security requirements. Every solution solved one problem and created two more. Human systems offered recommendations. They always did. The recommendations were optional. Ignoring them carried consequences. On the occupied world, the human population changed behavior overnight. Factories reduced output. Hospitals shifted to emergency-only schedules. Transportation grids prioritized evacuation readiness over commerce. To imperial observers, it looked like retreat. To human analysts, it was something else. Risk isolation. A human governor addressed the planet in a single broadcast. It is time, she said calmly. We will carry the weight now. No one cheered. They understood what that meant. Across human space, far beyond the occupied world, similar broadcasts occurred. They were not coordinated publicly. They did not need to be. Human worlds began drawing power from reserves never declared to the Council. Stellar siphons activated. Deep core reactors pushed past safe margins. The energy surge fed the network humans had been building quietly for generations. The one the elders once used. The difference was scale. Human stars dimmed slightly. Only slightly. But astronomers noticed. The Empire's scientists panicked when the data reached them. You can't do this, one shouted during an emergency council briefing. You're destabilizing stellar systems. A human representative responded without raising her voice. We know. The council demanded an explanation. The explanation was simple. Humans had reached the point where correction required commitment, not pressure. They were willing to pay the price. No other species ever had. The network came fully online. It did not fire weapons. It did not erase fleets. It adjusted gravity, probability, and infrastructure access across key nodes of galactic civilization. Hyperlanes shifted by fractions too small to be detected instantly, but large enough to alter transit efficiency. Communication relays rerouted through human-managed arbitration nodes. Energy markets recalculated prices based on new risk models that favored stability over dominance. Empires that adapted survived. Those that resisted hemorrhaged resources trying to maintain old advantages. The empire tried both. It failed at both. The ruler convened his final inner circle. The room was smaller than it used to be. Several seats were empty, resigned, arrested, or simply gone. He asked a question no empire ruler had ever asked out loud. How much will this cost us? No one answered immediately. Then an economist spoke. Everything you want to keep, she said. But not everything you need. The ruler looked older than his years. He ordered withdrawal from the occupied world. The order arrived too late to change the process, but not too late to matter. Human command acknowledged it. They did not celebrate. They mourned. Because withdrawal did not stop consequence. It only defined its shape. The Empire's fleets pulled back in orderly fashion. No shots were fired. No one chased them. The galaxy watched. Many expected humanity to strike now, to punish weakness, to assert dominance. Humans did not. They had already won. What followed was worse for those who still did not understand. The network released its final phase. Judgment without revenge. Empires were not destroyed. They were reduced. Territories reorganized according to population consent metrics. Military forces capped by sustainability thresholds. Economic advantages tied to contribution rather than extraction. No throne was touched. No leader executed. But power flowed differently. The empire woke one cycle to discover it no longer controlled its outer systems. Those systems had not rebelled. They had rebalanced. Legal petitions, backed by human-documented data, transferred authority to local governance under council oversight. The empire appealed. The appeals were reviewed. Denied. Every denial cited the empire's own laws. That hurt most of all. On human worlds, the cost became visible. Cities dimmed. Power rationing began. Medical facilities operated under triage protocols. Entire research sectors shut down permanently. Human citizens accepted it. Not quietly, proudly, because they knew why. A human child asked her father why the sky looked darker. The stars are helping us, he said. Will they be okay? He hesitated. Yes, he said. Eventually. Some stars would not be. Humanity recorded their names anyway. Across the galaxy, species reacted in disbelief. No one sacrifices like this, said a council delegate. An elder answered. That is why no one could stop them. The empire's ruler requested one final audience. Not with the council. With the elders. The elders agreed. The meeting was brief. You were warned, an elder said. I know, the ruler replied. I thought fear was weakness. It often is, the elder answered. Unless you fear the right thing. The ruler asked the question that haunted him. Why didn't you stop them? The elder looked at the projections of dimming human stars. Because we tried once before, it said, and learned that stopping humans only delays consequences. It never prevents them. The ruler returned to his palace alone. He signed the final restructuring accords. When he finished, the empire he had ruled no longer existed as it once had. It still stood, but it would never dominate again. Human systems began powering down the network. Stars were released from load. Some recovered. Some did not. Humanity did not hide the losses. They published them. Every world lost. Every life given. Every system burned. The galaxy read the numbers. They were unbearable. That was the point. At the Galactic Council, the elders did something unprecedented. They stood. They bowed. Not to a throne. Not to a flag. But to a species that had proven something the galaxy had forgotten. That power did not come from conquest. It came from the willingness to suffer so others would never have to. Humanity returned to silence after that. No fleets. No declarations. No demands. Only records. And one new law, written into every charter, every treaty, every archive. Never provoke humans. Not because they are violent, but because they are willing to pay a price no one else will. The galaxy accepted the law because it had seen the cost, and it knew humanity would pay it again if it ever had to. The war never received a name. Historians would argue later that this was because no one could agree when it began, or if it had truly been a war at all. There had been no declaration, No final battle, no moment when victory was announced across the stars. Yet when the network powered down and the consequence settled, the galaxy was no longer the same shape. Empires measured power in fleets, borders, and fear. After humans, power was measured in alignment. That change frightened everyone. The Empire's former territories did not fall into chaos. That was what its leaders had predicted and what they had warned others would happen. Instead, something more unsettling occurred. They stabilized. Local councils formed using frameworks humans had quietly shared years earlier. Resource distribution adjusted to population need rather than extraction quotas. Defense forces shrank, but did not disappear. They became regional, cooperative, transparent. Former subjects did not celebrate. They rebuilt. The Empire watched this with a bitterness deeper than rage. It had ruled through command. Humans had ruled through consequence. Across the galaxy, species that had lived under the shadow of greater powers began re-evaluating their own systems. They requested access to human archives. They studied the protocols. They asked questions humans did not rush to answer. Humans never imposed their way. They only explained it. An explanation was enough. At the Galactic Council, sessions grew longer and quieter. Grand speeches lost their effect. Delegates came prepared with data instead of threats. Votes slowed. Decisions became harder, but more durable. An elder observed the chamber and spoke softly to another. "They have learned restraint," it said. The other elder replied, "No, they have learned fear of consequence. Restraint comes later." Human representatives attended council sessions again. They did not sit at the center. They did not ask for authority. They brought records. When disputes arose, humans would open an archive, highlight precedent, and remain silent. Most arguments ended there, because the archive never lied. On human worlds, recovery was slow. Some cities never regained their former brightness. Some research facilities remained abandoned. Memorials grew in places where infrastructure once stood. Humans did not hide these scars. They built around them. A human leader addressed a planetary assembly months after the network shut down. "We are weaker now," she said openly. "Anyone who says otherwise is lying." No one interrupted. "We chose this," she continued, "not because we wanted to win, but because we refused to lose in silence." The crowd listened. "We will recover," she said, "but we will never forget what it cost to be heard." Across the galaxy, that message spread. Strength began to be redefined. The Empire's former ruler lived out his days quietly. His title was gone. His authority reduced to ceremonial counsel. He spent long hours reading human histories, human philosophy, human accounts of past collapses. One passage haunted him. Humans did not record their victories first. They recorded their mistakes. He understood then why they had been so dangerous. They learned faster than anyone else. A generation passed. Children grew up in a galaxy where borders were flexible and empires cautious. They learned about the Great Adjustment in schools, though the term was debated endlessly. Some called it human intervention. Others called it the correction. Humans called it what they always had: the cost. On one human world, a group of students toured an archive vault. They passed holograms of old star charts, treaties, and system models. One student asked the guide, "Why did we stop after we won?" The guide answered gently, "Because winning was never the goal." What was? Making sure no one could do this again without understanding what it would cost. The student frowned. Could it still happen? The guide paused. "Yes," she said. "That is why we keep the records." The elders continued to watch humanity carefully. They did not fear humans anymore. They respected them. That frightened them more. Because respect meant equality. And equality meant the galaxy's oldest guardians no longer controlled the final outcome. One elder summarized it best during a closed conclave. "Humans have made themselves unnecessary," it said. "And that is the most powerful position of all." A younger elder asked, "What if they change?" The answer came without hesitation. "Then the galaxy will know. Because humans will record it first." Far from council chambers and archives, at the edge of human space, a small monitoring station observed the stars. The station had no weapons, no defenses, only sensors and long-range recorders. A human operator reviewed the data. All stable, all quiet. He logged the status and closed the file. The final line read, "Alignment holding. No corrective action required." He leaned back and looked at the stars. For the first time in a long while, they were steady. Humanity did not celebrate the peace. They maintained it, because they knew something no empire ever truly learned. Peace was not the absence of war. It was the presence of memory. And as long as humans remembered, the galaxy would think twice before testing what came next. The galaxy did not announce the end. There was no signal, no declaration, no moment when history clearly turned the page. The era after humans began the same way their intervention had, quietly, almost politely. Ships kept flying. Worlds kept turning. Stars kept burning, some a little dimmer than before. But everyone felt it. The tension that had once sat beneath every treaty, every border, every military exercise was gone. Not replaced by trust, never that, but by awareness. Awareness of consequence. In the centuries before, galactic law had been enforced by power. Fleets backed words. Sanctions hid behind threats. Peace existed only as long as someone stronger chose to maintain it. After humans, peace existed because breaking it became unbearable. No council decree declared this. No elder inscribed it into stone. It simply became true. New civilizations rose during this era. Young species entered interstellar space with curiosity instead of fear. When they studied history, they did not see humans listed as conquerors or rulers. They saw them listed as a constant, an anomaly, a species that intervened once and ensured it never had to again. On many worlds, memorial days were observed in silence, not for fallen soldiers, but for lost capacity, for stars that burned shorter lives, for cities that never fully recovered. Humans attended these memorials openly. They never asked others to share the grief, but others did, because the cost had not only been human. It had been shared, willingly or not, by an entire galaxy forced to confront what power actually meant. The Galactic Council evolved. Slowly, painfully. Old procedures were discarded. Emergency powers were restricted. Oversight bodies gained real authority. No single empire ever again held unchecked control over interstellar infrastructure. When debates grew heated, someone would eventually say the phrase, "Remember the adjustment," that ended arguments faster than any threat. The elders faded from prominence. They did not vanish, but they no longer guided the galaxy openly. Their warnings were no longer needed. Younger species had learned the lesson the elders had failed to teach for millennia. Fear of annihilation was not what preserved civilization. Fear of responsibility did. Humanity returned, by most measures, to obscurity. They rebuilt their world slowly, carefully. They refused aid that came with obligation. They accepted help freely offered, but recorded every agreement with ruthless transparency. Human fleets remained small. Their technology advanced, but not in ways meant to intimidate. Their greatest investments were not weapons, but archives. Living systems of memory, accessible to anyone willing to learn. Many species sent observers. Some sent students. A few sent spies. The spies always left changed. Because there was nothing to steal, only lessons to absorb. One such visitor, a diplomat from a newly spacefaring species, once asked a human archivist a question that had echoed across centuries. "Why didn't you take control?" the diplomat asked. "You could have ruled everything." The archivist smiled sadly. "Rule requires maintenance," she said. And we were already tired. Tired of what? Of cleaning up after those who confuse power with purpose. The diplomat did not fully understand, but they recorded the answer anyway. On a distant world that had once been part of the empire, children played under skies no longer patrolled by foreign fleets. They learned history from teachers who spoke carefully, without hatred. They were taught that their world had once been conquered. They were also taught that it had been freed without a single shot fired in its name. That contradiction fascinated them. One child asked, "Were humans heroes?" The teacher shook her head. "No," she said. "They were accountants." The class laughed. The teacher did not. "They counted everything," she continued. "Lives, time, risk, loss." They understood that if you do not count the cost early, you pay it later, with interest. The empire itself became a case study taught across the galaxy, not as a villain, but as a warning. A civilization that had everything it needed to endure and still chose certainty over wisdom. Its former ruler died quietly, his passing marked by a single paragraph in the archives. His final recorded words were not regret, but clarity. "I mistook silence for weakness," he had said, "and patience for surrender." Those words were cited often. especially by those tempted to test the boundaries of the new order. Because there were always those tempted. Ambition did not vanish from the galaxy, nor did greed, fear, or pride. But ambition now faced something it had never faced before: memory. Every attempted expansion was analyzed against historical models. Every act of aggression triggered comparisons no one wanted to resemble. Markets reacted faster than militaries. Allies hesitated before committing, not because humans threatened them, but because humans had already shown what happened when systems broke, and how much it hurt to fix them. On one human world, long after the adjustment, an elder visited quietly. No council announcement, no escort, just an old being walking through a human archive. They stopped before a record marked simply, "Consequence initiated." The elder stood there for a long time. A human attendant approached, respectful but unafraid. "Do you regret it?" the elder asked. The human considered the question. "Yes," she said. "Every day." The elder seemed surprised. "Then why would you do it again?" The human looked at the stars displayed across the archive ceiling. "Because regret means we understood the cost," she said, "and paid it anyway." The elder nodded slowly. That was when the elder finally understood why humans had terrified them. Not because they were ruthless, but because they were willing to hurt themselves to stop others from being hurt. That was not a trait the galaxy knew how to fight. Years turned into decades. Decades into centuries. The law remained. It was never carved into stone, never enforced by fleets, never spoken as a threat. It lived in shared memory, in archived data, in the quiet hesitation before any act of domination. Never provoke humans. Not because they would destroy you, but because they would endure what you could not. And they would make sure you remembered why. At the edge of human space, the monitoring station still watched the stars. The same operator, older now, slower, reviewed the daily status. All stable, all quiet. No corrective action required. He paused, then added a personal note to the log. Not required. Not standard. Memory intact. He saved the entry and shut down the console. Outside, the galaxy moved on, cautious, aware, alive. Humanity did not follow. It remained, watching, remembering, and ready if the galaxy ever forgot what it had learned the hard way.